Hello, my name is Nina. Welcome to my channel, Inside the Mind of a Human Predator. In this video, I'd like to discuss why it is particularly challenging for targets of domestic abuse and violence to deal with the current pandemic lockdown conditions that have been implemented in much of the world. As always, the disclaimer is that I am not a mental health professional, so the opinions expressed in my videos are mine and mine alone. If you were to peruse the headlines just for the United States in the past week, you would see a number of big stories about domestic violence under lockdown. On April 2nd, CNN did a story in which they described the way women used code words at pharmacies in order to escape their abusers, because pharmacies are considered essential shopping. Then on April 4th and subsequently April the 5th, NBC did a number of stories. One was about the fact that the home is not the safest place, surprise, surprise, for targets of domestic abuse and violence. And the next story was basically about the statistical rise of phone calls to the police reporting incidents of domestic violence. So that's just the United States. If you were to put in the names of other countries into the search engine, you would see a similar situation. For instance, you could look up France. So this is quite alarming, and it appears to be one of those things that were not considered when the lockdown measures were implemented. And of course, the overall mental health effects of a lockdown on large populations will only remain to be seen. So in this video, I'd like to look at targets of abuse in two categories. One is the most obvious, targets that are still in violent or abusive situations. And the second category is about targets that have left such scenarios. So that one is less obvious. So the first category is the targets that are still in abusive situations. This could be, of course, a romantic partnership, but this could also be a family of origin situation, for instance, a parent-caregiver dynamic. Now, by definition, dealing with what I call a human predator, an individual who is dysfunctional, maladaptive, who displays a host of dysfunctional traits that could be narcissistic, that could be psychopathic, not necessarily at the level of a diagnosable personality disorder, but at the level of causing interpersonal harm to multiple individuals. And when you are in that situation, the human predator, the maladaptive dysfunctional individual, essentially has near total control of your life, even if it did not start off this way. It's easy to see how this would be the case in a parent and child dynamic, even an adult child that is still living in the parent's home. In romantic situations, this is something that develops gradually. Initially, the maladaptive person makes small decisions for you, demonstrating red flags here and there, but nothing on a grand scale, making decisions for what you should eat at a restaurant, what movie you should watch, and gradually he or she ends up controlling your life to the point where you're isolated from friends and family, you lose your own hobbies. If you were financially independent at the beginning of this relationship, you're now under control of this person, initially starting off with legitimate situations like shared bank accounts, future faking business plans, and so on and so forth. So now these targets are essentially in a situation where they're under 24/7 control of this person, which is why it's so alarming. So they're constantly walking on eggshells and trying to foresee the next Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde change in their emotional state, which of course is internal rather than external. Of course, it could also be exacerbated by external circumstances like the pandemic lockdown, and the results could be devastating. It could be the silent treatment, it could be rages, it could be physical violence, which is of course why we're seeing all these articles about women trying to use whatever they can to escape their circumstances, like code words at pharmacies. Now, the less obvious category is targets who have left these scenarios, whether family of origin or romantic relationships. These individuals have fought very, very, very hard, using all of their emotional, psychological strength to get out, using whatever resources were available to them, draining their bank accounts, going to the courts, and after many months, and in many cases years, they're now free. And they're slowly rebuilding their lives. The little things that other people take for granted, like being able to go to the coffee shop that you want and sit there for an hour, choosing what movie you want to watch. Basically, these daily decisions, the daily joys, they are not taken for granted because these things were not available to them, and they're essentially happy on a daily basis because they're able to do these things for themselves once again after many years. And here comes the pandemic lockdown. And once again, they find themselves in a situation where both fundamental and daily decisions are being made for them by someone else. Now, I'm not interested in discussing the political repercussions of this, but simply the emotional and psychological state in terms of this being a comparable scenario. Even the fact that the lockdown was gradually introduced in some places. Initially, it was supposed to be 2 weeks, then it was extended once again, and the list of allowable activities outside the home had gradually been reduced. The types of businesses that can and cannot remain open have also been diminished. So this is that very boiling frog analogy where things become more and more difficult gradually, so you're no longer noticing them as in such a hypervigilant way as you would be had it happened rapidly. Thank you for watching. As you're navigating the uncertain waters, pardon the pun, of the pandemic lockdown, please think of those in your life that may find themselves one-on-one with a destructive, dysfunctional individual, and check up on them, even if by text message, in a safe way. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.